dangerous. He really kind of could strike on a rock or at night. And after he got out of the first grotto where the daylight ran out, he made his first man. And back then, there were no steps, no paths, no railings. He was going up and down and around through a very circuitous route, trying to go deeper and follow the path that Bruno took. All the while yelling for him, and each time he matched would burn out, he'd reach in his pocket for the next one. And he told us he crossed the river about 4 times, probably got about this far, reached in his pocket, only to discover he just used his last match.
Oops.
Now, this is pitch darkness, no light in here whatsoever. How do you think he found his way out?
Follow the water.
Yeah, exactly. He knew water would run downhill and eventually it would have an opening. And he hoped that opening would be large enough for him to get through as well. And it was. It was only about, at the time, about 30 inches high. He had to turn his head sideways to keep his mouth above the surface of the water, but he was able to fall out of the water. It took him a couple hours to get out. His family was waiting outside. They were obviously enjoying the view. He could see that he made it. And his dog Bruno came out just a little while after that, came out the same way he went in because he could follow his own scent trail. And 50 years later, Elijah wrote a more detailed account of that exploration and claimed he shot the data for himself. So I'm not sure if that was something we forgot to tell the first couple times in the story. That was literally licensed. So that is how the Cape got discovered. So that was 1874. Just since 1874 to the early 1900s, the majority of the animals that we'll see in the Cape was created by humans exploring. Again, a lot of people came up here not only because of the beauty of it, but the novelty of it. The novel cave you recognize as something really unique and special, and lots of people came to see it, and still do to this day. Any questions before we head deeper?
Any indication of Native Americans?
None. No, we do believe they were aware of the opening just because they lived in these mountains for so long that it was too cold in here for them to live inside the cave. 44 degrees is too cold, and there were no natural resources that they used found inside the cave, so they didn't leave anything inside, and it wasn't part of their oral history either. So we don't know if they eventually fall into the cave or anything. No remains were ever discovered of a human inside the cave. So as we go across the next bridge, I'd like you to focus on the ceiling. The ceiling of that room is named for the old story about Jonah and the whale, and you'll see it resembles the inside of a whale. So you can see the spine and the ribs to each side. That looks like we all got swallowed by a whale. So look for that as we cross over the next bridge. Everybody's smuggling, there is an optional early exit coming up, so keep that in mind after the right now we're in the tunnel go? This tunnel was built to make it easier to access our caves. You can tell it's different, man-made, it's like person-shaped and square, there are drill holes in certain spots where they drilled a hole, put in some dynamite to fracture the rock. And this was built at the request of the Park Service back in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. This is the height of the Great Depression, and men were put to work at national and state parks all around the country, doing hard physical labor, creating paths, tunnels, stair steps, trails, etc. And they did it all for $30 a month each. So it's hard physical labor, and it really is credited with getting us out of the depression in no small measure. But the one thing we didn't anticipate that this tunnel and the engine tunnel also did was it created a wind tunnel through the cave. And during the winter, that wind tunnel allowed freezing to move much deeper into the cave than it did where the tunnels had just been. And that ultimately was fracturing those calcite formations. And we didn't recognize it because it was slow. It's like the creation of a pothole in Michigan. It takes lots of freeze-thaw cycles to break apart those rocks. As the ice swells, it slowly moves the pieces of asphalt apart, or in our case, the little pieces of calcite apart. So it was slowly damaging the cave. And a lot of the damage we saw in that second stop, where we were looking at all the flow stuff that was fractured, that was made really by this tunnel. And we came up with a solution. You've probably heard of one before. It's called a door. And we got two of them. We installed them, one here and one in the exit. And that cut down the airflow and restored it back to its original levels and prevented it from getting worse. But it took us 50 years almost to recognize and implement the solution. So the Park Service does that from time to time. We compromise our preserve and protect portion of our mission to improve access, to make it easier for people to enjoy parts of the park. And then in hindsight, we recognize the error and do something to amend it. So the pathway here was to make it easier to access our cave. By the way, if we didn't have this tunnel, to get to the next section, we'd have to crawl on our knees 30 inches high through the river, then come up in a ravine, a deep ravine, and then have to scale a wall of a steep underground cliff. So be glad this tunnel's here today. It's a whole lot easier. All right, let's head through this door. The doors will close behind your head off.
Okay.
If you look around you in this room, it's a large room, and the marble is mostly exposed. Very little is covered with calcite. And calcite, once again, is formed by dripping water, carrying that calcium down and depositing out in calcite crystals. So this room's probably been mostly dry for hundreds of thousands of years. And most of the space in the room wasn't created by running water, but rather by acid dissolution of the rock. That's why this is all rough edged, is that the acid just follows the weakest link. Including, it looks like it probably dropped the rock at one point. And certainly all this falling rock above us happened because the acid ultimately etched around a piece of rock, allowing it to drop from the ceiling. So these rocks, none of this has happened since we started giving tours here, but it does take eons for this kind of opening up of space in a cave to occur. Now these fallen rocks here that are kind of wedged, our geologists call this type of rock a poison rock. Anybody know why? No? It's because one drop will kill you. Yeah, so, okay, I'll keep trying. Yeah, this one's actually quite stable. You can't really tell, but it's almost a fix on the backside. But yeah, all these rocks did drop at one time, and at some point, some other rocks will drop. We have had earthquakes down here while people have been below ground. Good news is, folks, nobody felt a thing. And I don't mean that in a joking sense. I mean, they did not feel the earth move. Above ground they did, because the energy dissipated through the soil, but the rock barely moved and people couldn't feel it. So we're probably safe if there's another quake while we're down here. Now, let me just finish the story about those CCC guys, the Civilian Conservation Corps workers. Once again, this is during the Great Depression. There was no work. Most of these guys were not skilled laborers. They were, ministers and bakers and tailors, you name it, every walk of life. And they signed on to work for $30 a month because there really was no other work for them to get. And so the quality of the workmanship, some of the stairs you probably noticed are perfect, beautiful. That was probably a skilled laborer, a skilled tradesman who built that one. And some of them are really rough. And that may have been somebody that was not trained, or could be that you get what you pay for, because these guys were only working for, in essence, $5 a month. They were required to send $25 of that 30 home every month to support their families wherever they came from. That's how the economy was supposed to get kickstarted, to spread just a little bit of income widely across the country, and it did work. And in the bargain, we ended up with great park systems throughout our country, with lasting features like these parks out of bedrock and trails and so forth. So they really did help build our park system so we all can enjoy it. All right, any questions before we move deeper? So there's remains of a life form coming up ahead that I want to talk about for a minute, because it's very rare that most people don't see this life form. It's only the skeletal remains, but it might hold promise for human health in the future. So let's go look at that next. And as you are looking around, you can notice a deep ravine below us, and there's also these funny growths on the wall and on the ceiling that are white, but they're all different odd shapes. And this is that life form that used to exist here. This is called moon milk, and now it's dead, and this is the calcified remains of the bodies. And it's bacteria that forms it, a bacteria that interacts with the calcite drips, and to live in a very resource-poor environment like a cave, they, as a defense mechanism, have evolved to produce these enzymes that kill other bacteria. And that's the future potential value, is that back in ancient times, early people around the world would send their medicine man or their shaman into caves to collect this material. And only the top layer would be soft and living, kind of like growing on a coral reef, only the top layer is alive. The top layer would be the consistency of like cream cheese. And they first started using it just as makeup, because they didn't have white opaque makeup back in those days. But they found that when they smeared it on a wound, it would kill the infection that was in that wound. It had antibiotic properties like Neosporin does. And that's the value we think for the future. Researchers are paying cavers around the world that find moon milk in newly discovered caves for samples of that living tissue. And they are testing the enzymes produced by that moon milk to see if it works against some of the superbugs that infect us today. So a future antibiotic treatment might come out of a cave. But now we just look at these things and see funny shapes and use our imagination. And like this one, most of us would say that looks like a heart. So the heart of the cave. Most of us, well, actually, no, I won't go. We see different things on this one. Let me go first, please. I see a cat climbing up a drain pipe. I don't know what you guys were imagining, but definitely a cat climbing up a drain pipe.
That's what I saw.
Yeah,
Obviously a cat.
obviously.
Does
And
moon
this-
milk grow in any kind of cave or just marble or what?
No, they'll grow in any solution cave. So marble, limestone, dolomite, other sedimentary, high calcium carbonate type of cavern. Not a wind cave, not a sea cave, not a lava tube, unless there are calcium deposits above the lava tube, which is really rare. So this one looks like an old man's face, so they called him the old man, duck head. That one to me looks like a pig head. And kids, have any of you seen the movie E.T.? Does that kind of resemble E.T. there? Somebody thought he did. And it kind of looks like there's little baby legs hanging across his lap there. So it looks like E.T. spanking a baby, maybe? I don't remember that scene from the movie, do you? I think that one got cut. Anyway, this early explorers didn't recognize what this material was because it was dried out by the time they discovered this cave. But there is some living moon milk further in the cave. We'll look at it when we get there. I did also want to point out this research station. Some of you noticed down in the ravine, it's just plastic plumbing tubes and plastic tarp, and it's collecting water. There are sensors in the bottom of that bag, and it's hooked up to a computer we have sort of hidden semi behind a rock. And this is to collect water so we can measure the volume of water dripping into the cave, as well as the mineral content of that water. We have already been able to detect in the 15 years we've been collecting data that global warming is affecting the environment here inside the cave already. Even though temperature inside the cave has not yet changed, water flow into the cave has decreased. As the drought has spread across this part of the country, as temperatures have risen, water flow on the mountaintop and coming down into our cave has decreased. So we're seeing less water, higher mineral content in the water, and right now we're just in the data gathering phase. We hope to be able to preserve this environment for those 5 rare creatures that evolved in this unique area. And if we can set aside a piece of the cave for them to be successful in spite of what's happening outside because of human impact, we will do that. So there are 21 of these research stations all around the cavern system. All right, any questions before we head up the stairs?